Hi everyone, welcome back to Casual Watch Reviews Sunday Social for a interesting topic about YouTube watch content, which I suppose the irony is that only Pete and I turned up. So maybe even the other panel members are hitting critical mass with their live streams. But before we dive into that, Pete, what are you wearing?
Today I am wearing, or was wearing before I took it off to show everyone, the Alpina Extreme.
Yeah.
So one of my very, very few bracelet watches, but it's an integrated bracelet, so I don't get a choice.
Yeah, there's a guy I work with called Brett. Shout out if he's watching, he might not be, but he loves that watch and he keeps asking me about it. And I'm just like, just buy it, dude. It's a good watch. I'm telling you.
It's a good watch. Is it the greatest watch ever? No, but if you like it, it is. So just buy it. It's a good watch.
Yeah, okay. And then I'm wearing that UT 8000 again from RZE. Yeah, really cool. I was traveling this week, so I put my Christopher Ward GMT on. But as soon as I got home, it's just one of those watches. I'm like, oh, I'd like to wear that. So
Does that have a time zone function? I feel like
No.
we're doing an infomercial here.
Yeah, so it does. It only. So this is an interesting part of the topic. So it has only a stopwatch and an alarm,
Okay.
one alarm. So it's not fully featured. It doesn't have all of the features of a G-Shock. But in the interview with Huey, they were saying, yeah, because it takes a lot of programming. They source the movement. It's not a Casio one.
Yep.
So I think a few people have made comments about that, but I think the thing is that people are like, oh well, the G-Shock's got X number of features, which is totally true. Of course it has much more fully featured, but you can't get a G-Shock that's fully titanium case for this price. Now, a couple of people have mentioned, oh well, the Pro Trek. A lot of people think that the Pro Treks that say titanium are actual. The watch itself is titanium, but they're not. The watch head is resin and the band is titanium. So,
Oh, really? What's the point of that? That seems like doing it ass about.
It's the lightness thing. So a couple of people have said, "Oh, there's an ABC Pro Trek that's around this price," which of course does have a lot more features, but the actual case of the watch is not titanium.
Okay.
And I think it's because it has all buttons and like all sorts of stuff on. So I imagine that even for Casio, that might be quite a difficult thing to machine out of titanium with all of its different facets and everything. So yeah, there's been quite an interesting discussion in the chat about that one. But and I've got another interview that I'm doing tomorrow. But I mean, I guess leading into our topic here, I mean, I've certainly been having a bit of a break, as people will probably noticed from the channel. Well, I hope you noticed having a break from the reviews. And we're kind of, I mean, Pete, I'll let you introduce because this was your idea, this topic.
Yeah, well, I as some people would know, not a huge number. My channel was only ever tiny. I haven't really put a video out for probably coming up on 6-ish months, and a lot of that has been because I just haven't had something I wanted to say. There's been bits and pieces of, oh, that's interesting, or I might have an opinion about that, but nothing that's sort of been that I felt like I haven't said before, or that I felt like someone else hasn't said, that I felt like really needed to be added to the world. And then that's also in a world where I've been thinking I don't really have anything to say. I've also been finding no one's saying anything I want to listen to. I've just, it's not like when you're new to the hobby, you're just like a kid in a candy store. You just want to try everything. You hoover up all the information that you can. But you know, I've been doing this for coming up on 10 years now. And now I kind of know what I need to know. I know more than most people that are running media outlets. And so I certainly understand more than that, than most of them. So now it's a case of I want to know either the answers to very specific questions, or if I do want to just tap on you, I want to be either entertained in a way that I enjoy it, or I really want you to tell me something I would not otherwise know, would not otherwise even know that I need to know. So
Yeah.
my demands have become really specific. And I'm wondering if, and I realize I'm probably right to the edge of what's normal, but I'm suspecting that's happening across the board. And that as the supply of newbies to the hobby has kind of wound back, I suspect it's happening to a lot. I suspect visits to a lot of channels, a lot of websites have really slowed down. I've done a lot of talking, so over to you.
Yeah, no, I actually, and we'll definitely um, ask the commenters as well, like what watch stuff are you still watching? Because I mean, and we're talking like websites, we're talking magazines if you still read the magazines, and obviously YouTube channels as well. Because I think I've slowed down on the reviews a little bit because my views were starting to wane a little bit. So I am just having like a reset and thinking about it, because it seems like the content that is doing well at the moment is the kind of the Andrew Morgan content, where he's creating essentially the same piece of content 5 times, just tweaking the variables a little bit. And I think that is feeding the YouTube algorithm. And I think also, I know James Blonde is in the chat there. He messaged me something on Instagram where there's another YouTuber that's trying to make a name for himself by being basically a little bit of an asshole about other YouTubers. I won't call it out here unless we go into the subject. But and I know in our chat where somebody was asking about it, and they were like, well, hopefully YouTube won't promote it. But the problem is that is exactly what YouTube wants.
Yeah.
It wants controversially, it wants the clicks, it wants to keep the engagement of people. And it's just, obviously the top 10 lists are doing the same, aren't they? Because you've got to see what number 1 is. So it means the engagement is very high on those. So I think the room for what I do, which is, I guess, sort of, I don't want to say vanilla, but sort of a watch review that isn't also a piece of entertainment, which I think is probably my problem as well, is maybe the time for that has kind of run its course, perhaps.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's run its course and whether you've got to be really, really good.
Yeah.
So I'll so I suppose we may as well get into it and start with, well, what are you able to say? Let's start with YouTube. What kind of channels on YouTube are still catching you and that you're still watching? And I would probably say, I'd be curious to know how many are you subscribed to? So you see their content, you see it exists, but then you can never get around to watching. You never actually watch anything.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it, that YouTube algorithm? I'm there's something weird is happening at the moment with my algorithm. I watch a lot of politics stuff as well, like the sort of I like to keep up with what's happening in the news, and a lot of those content creators have now got really good. I mean, they've really got good, those content creators. It's not just somebody just throwing up a webcam and talking about the day. And I also watch. I mean, my wife works at Disney, so we watch like Disney related news stuff that always comes up, and then just the occasional thing will pop up around, some of the CNBC stuff, that the economics of, like I was watching one today, like the economics of Amazon returns, which was quite interesting. Like, I like those sort of short informational ones, but you're right, a lot of those I'm not actually subscribed to. And I do subscribe to a channel called Philip DeFranco Show, which is like he does news every day, like a news roundup, but it's like news and entertainment roundup. And for some reason now, every time I play a YouTube video, it auto plays one of his afterwards, even if I've watched it before. So yeah, I don't know what's kind of going on with that, but yeah, my watch content viewing has waned a little bit, and I don't know whether it's because I mean I've been doing it 10 years as well, so this is like maybe it's a 10-year itch.
Mm.
But I don't know whether I just know what I like now. Like my consumption of general watch, like just to learn about watches, is probably not quite like to learn about new watches. I kind of know the watches I like, and also I guess my watch, I haven't been sort of I've been trying to be careful this year about buying watches as well, so that also it leads into that, which
Yeah.
you don't necessarily want to be tempted.
Yeah, I did a count. I'm subscribed to. I've got like a couple of YouTube accounts. That way you can kind of like segment your algorithm. So I've got my general sitting around watching, doing my own thing, but I've also got a watch, basically my watch account, which is tied to the channel one as well. So that means that sort of the algorithm has a very specific view of me there. That one's got something like 70. So Pete McConville Watches has something like 75 subscriptions to almost exclusively watch-related content. And so every day I hope to find something interesting there. And I went back through my history, and there's really only been, let me count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 channels out of that 75 that I've watched a whole video through in the last 2 months.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it?
Everything else has just been kind of meh. For everyone's going to want to know who they are, and to know, wait to the end, and I'll tell you who. No, it's basically this watch, that watch, which you've accused of stealing my shtick of more the philosophy and the business side and the analytics of it. I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
I don't agree with everything he does, but I always like the approach he brings. It's always research led. He never says something that he hasn't thought about before he came on air. So I love that. I come away thinking, I come away from his videos not feeling dumber than when I went in, and that's always a good thing.
Yeah.
And so I watched that one. I've started watching, he's a younger bloke, and it's patchy, but he does the occasional really good video. A guy the channel name is Doug's Watches. And like I said, it's patchy and there's a lot of stuff I don't like, but he just recently did an interesting video on like, why do we even care about, he calls them homage, I'm going to say knockoff watches. What made knockoff watches become credible? When 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they were a joke.
Yeah.
Why do we now think that they're serious? What happened? Interesting. And it was an interesting idea that I hadn't really thought about before. So that's the perfect guy I like. ID guy is pretty good. So I've watched a couple of his videos, and I always forget if it's Evan or Ewan from You're Terrific.
Oh yeah.
Now he's at the other end. He's just flat out watch reviews, but he's so good and he's so funny and he's so well produced that I'll watch it because I just enjoy watching it. And that's it. No one else has really made the cut.
Yeah, the You're Terrific guy is he's like the the Steve Jobs or whatever thing is, where it's like it's incredibly hard to make something look simple, and he's like, actually his delivery is so slick. I mean, my I don't know how much editing he does. I mean, I have to do a lot of editing to make mine look like it's a flow. But let's have a look at what the audio, what everyone's saying. So yeah, so James Wall said there's a huge problem with watch media trading independence for access. I think we need more truly objective work and less sponsored content on the big sites. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of YouTubers in general get tarred with this. In fact, there was a funny Watch Crunch post I'd just read, and we'll get on to Watch Crunch in a bit, but there's a funny Watch Crunch post that I wrote where the guy was saying, essentially, let me find it. This was it. So he's obviously posted a Pagani designs on there, which I presume that even he knows looks like a fake Rolex. So of course, what seems like the norm here is to then post it on Watch Crunch to get, like, I guess, a shred of validation that what he did buy was not a fake, is what I assume it. And I guess that's compounded by the fact that he completely over explained it there. He over justified it, which always tells you that perhaps even he thinks that he knows that he bought a fake. But essentially what he's saying is he's talking about purists, and then he's talking about YouTubers and stuff, and it was like, YouTuber BS, or snap of big corporate and paid YouTubers. And I was thinking, like, which YouTuber does he think that's paid by Rolex? Like, I mean, even the big YouTubers aren't paid by major, like, maybe, of course, Adrian obviously has got a tie-in with Tudor, but I can't think of another, like, any YouTuber my size that has a consistent. Any brand doesn't. I mean, we get sent watches, sure, as for reviews, but we're not on the payroll of like,
and
Chris
people
Ford isn't paying me, for example.
and people ignore the other person that pays them, or maybe I'll rephrase that. People, sometimes it's not about who's paying them. Sorry, it's not about that they're being paid. It's who's paying them.
Yeah.
So in a strange way, if I start doing videos about Rolex because I know that Rolex videos will get a lot of clicks, and therefore I will get a lot of money, am I any better than the person who covers Rolex because Rolex sends them money? At the end of the day, I'm doing the video because someone's paying me, whether it's Rolex or whether it's Google via ad revenue, and that means via people clicking on me. I'm no better. I'm still whoring myself out and deciding what I'll say based on getting paid. The fact that I'm picky about my clients doesn't make me any more independent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing with certainly the thing with YouTube is, I know somebody mentioned, like, being independent, but you can't. It's one of those things where I always liken it, and I've mentioned this before, that scene in Monty Python: A Life of Brian, where he's being chased through the market, and he wants to buy a fake beard, and he's bartering, and they're like, "Oh, well, if you buy this gourd, if you buy this beard, you'll get a gourd." And he's like, "Well, how about this I'll just buy the beard and then I'll give you this for the gourd." And they're like, "No, the gourd's worth more than that." And he was like, "Well, you were going to give it me for free with the beard or whatever."
That's right.
And that's the same thing with YouTube. It's hey, you're encouraged to make content before you're monetized. And then when you do hit 1,000 views, whether you choose to be monetized or not, it still shows you what you would have earned. And it's funny because then you suddenly realize that, wow, all of this work that I did to get to 1,000 subscribers, which is a lot of work. Anyone, especially in our niche, it's a lot of work. And then suddenly you see a video that's earned like the equivalent of 50 cents or whatever. I mean, the interview I did on this, I mean, kindly they let me keep this watch, but this upload has earned, I was looking today, $7, around $7.50.
Yeah.
So it's funny that YouTube doesn't lend itself to be purely independent, because it puts a price on it, and then you're like, well, actually, I spent 10 hours. I'm worth more than that. So it's it's a kind of a spiral that you get into. And then the other thing as well, which just we can discuss this topic, is when people, when we get YouTubers, they get watches for free, so they do it. They don't look. The flip side of that is, well, hang on a second. One YouTuber, Jody, for example, can do more positive marketing on a watch than them putting ads in every single newspaper.
I think that's an interesting thing about how effective is watch media. Sorry, I shouldn't use that word. I want to stop. I want to stop using the word media because I think it's kind of confusing. I think media involves kind of there's two parts of it. There's content creation, which is kind of what we do, and then there's actual journalism. And I don't think there is any actual watch journalism. I don't think that exists. I think there's a couple of there's a couple of business-oriented, journalistic kind of places, but I actually put just about everything under just content creation. And once you get into that space of content creation, you're really only talking to watch geeks. So if you're a brand that's selling to watch geeks, which are a pretty limited market, then something like Jody is useful. Yeah. And in a way, this is kind of why to say I worry about Christopher Ward, for example, would be untrue because I don't care. But I wonder how Christopher Ward makes that transition from selling to watch geeks because they don't, although I did see them advertising in an airline magazine on the last flight I took, which was funny. How does a brand like Christopher Ward break out of this idea of selling to us and start selling to Joe Public in the street? Become a name alongside Breitling, TAG, Omega, Longines, Tissot. I mean, to every normal person, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of the watch guy at work. If someone's thinking about buying a watch, someone will mysteriously appear next to my desk. I have never had a single person who's come to me and said, I'm thinking about this. And I've recommended a lot of Christopher Ward's as great value watches. And they'll say, never heard of them, not something I'm interested in. It needs to be a brand I've heard of. Yeah. And so how does Christopher Ward make that jump? But so this idea of what Wistful Ignorance has said is kind of true, but then kind of not. In that it is a good way of marketing to a very specific group of people. And if you're trying to sell 200, 300 watches, great, it'll work well for you. But if you want to sell 20,000 watches, 50,000 watches, 100,000 watches, it's not a lot of help.
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting some great comments coming through here. So let's have a look. So so Nicholas says, I've no more time for watch drama channels. If you want low rent drama. But the thing is, for a time, that was like printing money for those channels.
Yeah, I have no idea. I saw a video the other day talking about Archie. And I haven't watched Archie Luxury for 4 years. I haven't even there's a whole range of those channels that I just don't watch, to the point where of the 70 channels I'm subscribed to, Archie and O'Sheen and those guys, I don't even want to know they exist. And I'm curious, does anyone still watch those channels? Do they still make money?
I mean, that's Archie's business, isn't it? Other than selling watches, isn't it? And I think he sells jewelry and stuff. But I mean, let us know in the chat if you still watch those channels.
I saw, who was it? Is it Bobby Legs does that watch soup thing? I saw he was talking about Archie. I didn't watch the video, so I just found myself thinking, does he still exist? And who watches that stuff? Because, I mean, if you do want to see that kind of drama, there are people who do it really well, and they're not in the watch space.
Yeah, it's funny because I know Brian was saying that he also watches Disney stuff. The Disney Disney news, like the Disney parks drama. There's drama in everything, isn't there? It's so funny that it's we have a little niche, and a lot of it's manufactured. Okay, so Sean says, I also do not watch as much watch stuff as I used to. I unsubscribe from a lot of them. I'm down to like 4 channels. I still love state of the collection videos from anyone. So that is interesting. Yeah, I still think the state of the collection videos are good, aren't they? Because it gives you an insight in what that collector's actually got.
Yeah, I'm not really interested in collectors. I don't like people very much. So one of the things I really enjoy a state of the collection video from a content creator I'm going to watch, because a state of the collection video gives me an insight into what that person values and how that person thinks. So if you watch a state of the collection video and it's 90%, I hate to pick on a particular brand, but it's like 50% Rolex, 25% shooter, and 25% stuff he was given that he apologizes for. He's not a serious channel. And he's not going to tell me anything I don't already know. He's not going to tell me anything I care about. And so it's nice to know that, because I can filter what that person says. Because that's unfair. It's not that they're not a serious channel. They're coming at watches from a completely different point of view to me. They're coming at watches from a place I don't want to look at. I don't want to come from. So state of the collection videos are a great way of saying, sort of positioning you, saying this is where I sit and how I look at things.
Yeah, no.
And it's funny though, James Bond, one of the very few watches I watch, one of the very few videos I do watch are those.
Yeah, and I like doing them.
Yeah, the only ones I really like watching are when actual people come on and say actual things. Now, there are a lot of videos that are pretty shit, where when they're talking to brand people, they don't ask very difficult questions, and the brand people kind of blow them off, sort of walk through it with just standard PR lines. It's unfortunate when that happens. Yeah. But sometimes I feel like, it's funny. When I was putting out videos, people would say, "Oh, how did you know that? And how could you have predicted that?" And it's like, because the guy said he was going to do it. I watched this video and he said that, we're working on this and this is going to come out next year, and I'm not surprised when it comes out. I think a lot of people just don't pay attention.
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of those. I mean, I've not been doing them with brands, but they're usually around a watch topic. And to be honest, I'm not really. I don't think I've done one where I've been like deliberately combative. I usually joke around a subject and stuff, but I don't do pure like brand. Yeah, I don't know. It's
I think one for me. I don't think you have to. You don't have to be like nasty, mean, combative. It's not. This is not investigative journalism, but I think you can have. I was watching a lot of the videos, because there's not a lot of CEOs that will do these sorts of things. Yeah. George Kern from Breitling will do a lot of these things, and that they were going to trim down the catalog, that they were going to bring out a new movement, that they were going to move away from Solita and ETA, that they were going to aim for smaller and broader watches away from aviation. That they and some fascinating insights into what the company was like before he took over, like the fact that we were going to build an in-house design, and I don't mean watch movement design. We were going to build an in-house watch design area, whereas previously, like before the George Kern and CVC partners came in, all the watches were designed by freelancers. So they would, they had no internal designers. They would go to people and say, "Hey, we're Breitling. We're wanting to design a new watch. Give us a product." The management had become so disengaged from running the company that they only sold watches via third-party distributors, and those third-party distributors had all the relationships outside with retailers and everything. So they'd gone completely. Teddy had gone completely hands-free and was just enjoying Boomba Boomba parties at in Switzerland, and that's kind of how the brand ended up trashing itself.
Yeah,
And he said all of that in interviews. It was fascinating.
yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, no, that's it. That is interesting. That would be an interesting one. So we'll just get through a couple more of these. So Robert Coleman says, I've gone from watching every bit of watch content to going just to this pod. Thank you very much. And Scottish Watches, the Scottish Watches guys, yeah, still very cool. Brassic Time says that there's only so many hours in the day you can spend watching watches. Just one more watch, that watch, this watch, you're terrific, a blog to watch, Doug's Watches, so he mentioned Doug's Watches as well, ID Guy, and the servicing channels. Those servicing channels, they're, I mean, however big, like, the biggest YouTuber is, whoever that is at the current, like, you know, Andrew Morgan or Teddy, they're like the sleepers, aren't they? Because some of those service channels get millions of views.
They do. I don't watch them, but I when I'm tired and I'm zoning out and I just want to like sit in front of the television and have things happen in front of me, I'll watch videos of people walking out into snowy forests and building a shelter by hand and sleeping overnight with their dog. That's my equivalent to a watch servicing channel.
Yeah, I'm the same. And the ones with the where they make tables out of wood and resin, or like they're just like they're on a lathe and they're just like wood turning a bowl or something. I could watch,
that's right, yeah. And ideally, shut up, don't say anything, don't tell me why or how, just let me watch this thing appear. So okay, so away from YouTube, is there any, what do you listen to any watch podcasts?
Do you know what? I don't. I listen to Scottish Watches. I don't listen to much else. I just thought of another YouTube channel that I watch a lot of. There's a guy called Trek Trendy who does like, he travels round, but usually he usually reviews like first class travel. So he's been on like the Orient Express.
Oh yeah,
and I think what's good about him is he's got like that luxury, but also he's like an everyman, but in a way that he kind of fits into the luxury environment, but also you could imagine that you were him. Like you could see, I could go on the Orient Express. I don't need to be, Baron, Sam, or 50th in line for the throne to get onto the Orient Express or whatever. So I think he's got the right. In fact, I think got a lot of watch review. I think maybe Adrian's kind of like that as well, isn't he? Where he's obviously got access to a lot of luxury stuff. But
yeah, we've clearly got a new viewer. Tafka Whack just is clearly hasn't watched much before because he has only just noticed that I give really negative vibes.
It's negative.
That's what I do, Tafka.
It's negative vibes only on this channel. Oh, Russell, welcome. Oh, Russell, this would be a good one for you. Russell is got that entertainment down.
Yeah.
Beautifully with the review.
Yeah. This is weird. Okay, time for complete honesty. I think Russell does a great job. Just not for me. It's not my kind of entertainment. But he's good at what he needs to be. So, like I said, podcasts. Do you listen to any?
Just Scottish Watches, to be honest. And then what else do I? When I'm on planes and stuff, I'm actually watching films or working on the plane.
Yeah.
I find it difficult to listen to a podcast on a plane because then I kind of fall asleep. So
for me, there's really only two. And again, my podcasts are similar to my YouTube channel. There's lots and lots and lots that I subscribe to, and I constantly go to them and hope that they're going to say something interesting. Like the Watchdog podcast with a friend of mine, Clayton, runs that. So I listen to that because A, he's a friend of mine, and B, he's got this kind of everyman approach to watches, which I kind of enjoy. But the only two podcasts I consistently listen to, like if it comes on, I am listening to it regardless of the topic, regardless of what goes on, is one it's called Open Work, which is run by the two guys that run a watch retailer, and they're absolutely open about it. So they run Collective Horology, which is a kind of high-end indie watch retailer out of California.
Okay.
But they talk about the watch industry through the lens of we are a retailer that has to actually sell product. And so let me cut through the myths. And so, they did a really interesting video last week of the myths in watchmaking, or the myths around watches. Like, people want smaller sizes. And they were able to say, as someone who actually sells watches to real people, let me tell you, that is a myth. Maybe we've gone down a millimeter or two, but people still want, 40 millimeters is still the sweet spot. And if someone makes a watch in 35, they said something interesting. They have never had someone come to them and say, I would buy this watch if only it was smaller. And they routinely have people say, I'd buy this watch, but it's too small for me.
Yeah, it's funny. I for years, my first job out of uni, for years, I worked for an Apple Mac reseller, and that was at the time. At the time, Macs weren't very prevalent in the UK. You would get them in schools, and then like architects would have them, or if you're in the media, would have them. But your average person wouldn't. It was when the first like transparent iMacs were coming out that they became sort of it. And then the iPod came out; they were more on the consumer thing. But I was like I was a bigger geek about Macs back then as I am about watches now. And the same thing happened. I started working for an Apple reseller and getting into it and hearing what people were really interested in. And it's funny, even when I would go watch shopping with my wife or with friends who aren't into watches, but they're like, oh, what do you think of this? I'm amazed at how much the strap on a watch influences the purchase, even though that is the easiest thing to swap out, isn't it? I suppose it's like car guys who probably can't understand, the custom car guys who can't understand why anyone will be put off a car because of the wheels that come with it when you can just change the rims out.
Yeah, well, that's very much how I am. I'm constantly mystified by how much people care about bracelets, because there is nothing easier to change. It's one of the things I'd point out is a lot of people confuse that something's not for them with something must be bad.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I think the Mad Watch Collector Russell over there does a great job. It's just not something I enjoy. So the whole point here was to talk about not necessarily what's good or bad, but what we're watching.
Yeah.
And likewise, when you talk about Teddy, who's got a mention here or there, Frederico, these guys are perfectly good. The problem with, I'll talk about Fed. I've been doing this for long enough that as soon as I see the first 30 seconds of what Fed's going to talk about, or, he mentions it in the thumbnail, I know what he's going to say. Yeah. I know what his opinions are. I know what he thinks of Piaget. I know what he thinks of Bremont. I know what he thinks of Omega. Nothing's changed. He hasn't said anything in 2025 that he didn't say in 2022, that he didn't say in 2020. So why would I watch the video? There's really, I feel like there's so many of these people that it's kind of, these people have been doing it for so long with me that I kind of know what they're going to say. They don't surprise me anymore.
Yeah, and I think I'm like that. I think I'm probably, people have a general idea when they see a watch that I'm reviewing, that I guess that they probably assume what I'm seldom surprised by a watch where I'm and this whole thing that obviously with Dennis, where it's like, well, I only take in watches that I think I might like, but that is true. So I'm having trying to have a reset of like where I position myself, because it's funny. I was chatting to somebody who was who basically had offered to do had offered to like run the channel for me. Essentially, they said, "Oh look, I'm a YouTuber. I'm a YouTube content creator, not a content creator, but I'm a YouTube manager. I'll do everything. You just have to film the B-roll and film your bit, and then I'll basically put it together. I'll sort the flow out, the narrative. I'll strategize with you. I'll do the thumbnails and all of this." And I was like, "Okay." And I said to them, "Look, I'm having a bit of a break," and they told me, like, for 4 videos a month, it was like around about $2,000 to $2,500, which, like, you might think, okay, wow, that's like a lot a month, which it is a lot a month. But then I was thinking to myself, God, that's actually what the work that I would be outsourcing to them is the work that I do. So that is the level of effort that I am putting in each month, and obviously the ad revenue or whatever is way lower than that. So it's like doing a job that is, it takes a lot of effort, but yeah.
And exactly. And so as you start wanting to realize some return on that, and like you said, like someone's offered you the gourd, so now you want to get a decent price for it. YouTube told you what they're going to value your work at, so now you want to make it worth more. And so you begin looking at, well, what are these people in the comments paying me? Because they're the ones who watch the videos and they're the ones who cause the base. So you start looking at, well, what do they want to know? And then you start thinking, well, I'm going to start doing top 5s. I'm going to start doing new watches. I'm going to start focusing on these brands. And next thing you know, you're not really enjoying what you're doing very much, or you are enjoying it, but you're enjoying the content creation and the making the money and the validation of having lots of clicks, and you kind of move away from watches that you care about, which is always fascinating to me when people own watches that are totally different, where you own watches that are totally different to the ones you talk about.
Yeah.
Someone's asked you a question.
Yeah. So Sam, but isn't the ad revenue only one side of it? YouTube is a shop window for you. What do you mean there, Matt? I mean, I don't like. I mean, other than like the odd watch that gets.
I think that's what he means. I think he means like eBay and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. For eBay and stuff. Yeah. If I get, I've been putting a few watches that I got sent on eBay. Yeah, but it's not a. It's not a. Not like Teddy, or maybe this is a distinction without a distinction, but it's not like Teddy or like Nico or somebody where this is an advertising content creation advertising arm of a business that I run. This is just a hobby for me.
Yeah, and Tafka's just come up with a question which is just completely misfounded. It's a question that sort of I get, but I also think is completely wrong-headed, which is, so what are we doing that's so much better? You know what? I'm not better. The people that I don't watch are better at producing videos I won't watch than I am. So it's not that I'm better at it. Most footballers are better than the coaches that tell them how to play. Most athletes are better at their sport than their coach, but it doesn't mean the coach doesn't know what he's talking about. Exactly. So I don't do anything better than these people. But that doesn't mean I want to watch them. I don't want to watch someone who's really good at doing something I have no interest in.
Yeah, it's funny that, and there are some like amazing channels where the photography is on point, and yet they don't get the views they should. I mean, I won't name them here, but there's one channel that I've been friends with for a long time, and his camera work and stuff is miles better than mine. Yeah, it's and like if somebody's mentioned Jody at Just One More Watch. I mean, Jody at Just One More Watch, his camera work's got good now, but for a long time he was by far extremely average in the actual footage of the watches. But he was the product, which was...
Jody's fascinating. I know him a little. We're not mates or anything, but I know him a little. We've had breakfast once or twice together, and it was amazing when we sat down and had breakfast, and someone just handed him a watch, and he's got the watch in front of him, and he starts talking, and it's a video. You know, and if you watch the videos, they do follow a really specific rhythm. They follow a really specific pattern. And he's been doing this for so long and in such a defined way that I'd love to know how long it takes him to prepare for a video, because I have a suspicion it's somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour. You know, he can just roll into it, do it, punch it out, clean up the video and put it on incredibly efficiently. It's oh God, I wish I could do that. From the moment I think about doing something, it takes me probably about 6 weeks for an idea to become something that I think this is worth saying in public. This is worth thinking about. Whereas he can do it like literally on the spot. Give him a watch, he'll give you the script in a couple of minutes.
Yeah. So Sean's saying, so Sam, how does Just One Watch do it? He is full-time and outsources his editing. Always curious. Well, I think the answer to that is that Jody for a long time did all of that editing himself, but his volume of and for a long time he didn't do it full-time. I think it's only maybe 4 or 5 years, maybe less, that he's been doing it full-time. But he probably had such a vast library of, like, you know, the I wouldn't say a pyramid, but like the funnel of all of his content will still be earning little micro transactions, and he's just got so, like, for example, I still earn more money a month off that video I made on how to resize an Invicta Pro Diver bracelet that I did like 5 years ago than any piece of content that I have produced since then. So, but Jody's probably had so many hits because he's so entertaining that people still watch his back catalog. It's all these like micro residuals that's probably, and I guess he made the calculation that suddenly you get to a point where it's like, my time is more valuable making the content than editing it. Like the kind of the thing with the private jet where they say, nobody, the only people that really need the private jet is where their time is more valuable than the cost of hiring the jet, than you know the time it saves them by going private jet. Like, you will go bankrupt if you just have a private jet for entertainment purposes, for your own entertainment.
That's exactly right. And I think, I mean, part of to answer Sean's answer is, one of it is, as I said, Jody is so efficient in producing videos, and I think that's probably got even more so now that he outsources his editing. He's able to produce, come up with the idea, come up with that content, get it produced and to his editor extraordinarily quickly. He really has a nice rhythm there. He has a fairly strong policy, which he's openly spoken about talking about. He does one video. He does about 3 videos a week. He does one where he's sent the watch. He does one where he bought a watch, and he does one where he's like borrowed it or something like that. And he's also incredibly open about the fact he sells the watches that he is given.
Yeah.
So he may only be a couple $100, might go up to $1,000, but you know, every single week he is making a couple of $100 to $1,000 on selling a watch he was given by a brand.
Yeah.
That's kind of part of his business model. And then the last bit that you mentioned is people seem to imagine that people think that the money comes, and I think in drama channels that's probably true. The money comes in the video the week that you produce it.
Yes.
I'm the same. I have not put out a video in 6 months. I am still making $40 or $50 a month based on people watching videos I made years ago. It's just, that's the way it works. And Jody's back catalog would be so enormous that he'd be making quite a bit.
Yeah. So we're not hating. We're not hating on anyone. We're just having a discussion just to clear that up. Brassic Time said, just because there's a discussion that you don't agree with doesn't make it hate, which is true, because we're just generally discussing about this. But Yeah, and that is the residual, and I do that. I sell on that on my eBay store now. I've been selling watches because also the other thing is like if you didn't sell them, what would you do with? You'd end up with quite a few, wouldn't you? The process that you get through, and also I think of them very much as like a restaurant review or something like that, where once I've reviewed the watch, like if I went to a restaurant, I wouldn't eat at that restaurant, the same restaurant every single day afterwards. Like once I mean, I do keep a few that I really like, but I more often than not move them. In fact, to be honest, and there'll be people in this group that could probably attest to it, I give away more than I actually sell of watches.
I think I've been given 2 watches in my entire time, and I felt so weird after that. I stopped. So it was in my very, very early days. I'd fired something up. I sent emails off to some people saying, I've got this really small channel, blah, blah, blah. Send me a watch, don't send me a watch, whatever, but it would really help me out. And a couple of people did. They were very nice. And then I felt really in a strange place. I was very fortunate of the watches I got sent. I kind of liked them, but I felt like I can't be too nice because I don't want to come across as a shill, but I do like them. And these people are really nice to me. And what if I say something wrong and then someone doesn't buy the watch? What if I say something wrong and someone does buy the watch? And then I thought, you know what? I don't need this drama. So I'm out of here.
The thing is, I think that is definitely. I mean, I went through a whole phase when I first did YouTube, being petrified of actually being on in the video. I just did the white gloves. I've removed all of those off now, except for maybe one, but I was petrified of putting my face on. But you do that when somebody sends you a watch. I've never had a brand call me up on something I've said about a watch. Now, I've not been overly harsh on one, I don't think. I only had one brand where they asked me to not post. I posted it and then they asked me to take it down, and I don't even think they're around anymore. But they had like a justification that basically everything I pointed out, they were actually going to amend. They'd realized it in that time frame, and they were going to amend it. So that was the only time I once did that, and that was probably 6 or 7 years ago now. So, but yeah, it's interesting, and there's also, I guess, a lot of I don't watch a lot of the stuff, to be honest. Like a lot of the drama stuff, I went through a phase, and
the other part of watch media, which I've mentioned a couple of times, which is exploding for me. And by the way, I notice I'm not even going to mention, are there any websites you go to? I don't. Actually, there is one. There's a collator website over at, in fact, I don't even know where it is. It's just some collator website that just does basically they're probably using AI to just grab the press release for a watch and then just create this page of, this is every single watch that any company has released this year. And that's really useful. You can just go there and say, what are all the watches that came out in June? Click, there it is.
That's cool.
That's useful. But there's no. Sorry, I'm talking to say something nice about Caveat. No, I don't work for you.
Make your own content. You're the one watching it. We're not holding you hostage. Phone a hostage negotiator.
That's right. Send me the link to your channel.
We're only joking. Thank you for joining. We appreciate you being in the comments.
No, the place where I have started, so I don't go to any websites other than this aggregator, or if I am researching something specific. So I have an idea in my head. I find myself wondering, I wonder what this particular watch is like. I wonder what is going on in this particular space. Then I'll search for that. And then I'll search for kind of what's going on, what someone's telling me. I have got really heavily into Substack subscriptions.
Oh yeah.
So this is kind of like a notice board type thing. So So on Substack, I know someone mentioned before that they don't like Jack Forster, but Jack Forster has a Substack where he writes weird things. Like because it's a subscriber only space. If he wants to spend 40 hours researching a topic on the history of crown pins and then write 2,000 words on crown pins, you can read it and it's there. Likewise, you've got a guy runs a site called Screw Down Crown who really goes deep into what are the differences between true hand-cut guilloche versus hand-assisted guilloche versus CNC guilloche versus printed guilloche. And we'll give you 10,000 words on that, which is really interesting for particularly weird and geeky and negative people like me. And The Fourth Wheel, which is a site I like. It's written by an ex-Watch journalist who now does these opinion pieces about the industry and how it's going and what's going to work and what's not going to work. And I kind of enjoy that. So I've really gone into like Substack. I think that's where I spend most of my time now.
Yeah. I've not really looked into that. I might start looking into that.
The downside is the vast majority of it is behind paywalls. These people, you just want to get paid. So that you have to pay to get in. And maybe that's just the price of admission,
Yeah. Because it's very hard to monetize other stuff, isn't it? I mean, we tried to do the podcast and stuff like that, and it's very hard to monetize it, and not necessarily that you have to monetize it, but also you do have to logically think about how you're spending your time doing these things, because I also work this isn't my job, far from it. So you have to, there is a cost to everything, even if it's not actually a monetary exchange.
And one of the things I'd point out, and it sounds like this is like this classic old person saying it, back when I was young, I did those things too. People are dragging up a lot of channels, which I used to be really big into. Jenny L, I really enjoyed her. Britt, I still watch her occasionally. I'm a bit of a fan of, actually I'm not a big fan of guilloche, but I just find the idea interesting to answer one of the comments. I feel like I've gone past that stuff. I feel like that's not talking to me anymore. And what'll be interesting is I came into the watch hobby about 10 years ago. So what's that make it? 2014, 2015.
Yeah. That's probably.
Yeah. And that is 6 to 8 years after the introduction. Yeah.
Fromage.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, got distracted. Yeah, I think I got into the watches at a time when a lot of people, I'm not special or unique, a lot of people were flooding into the watch community. YouTube was only about 8 years old. Instagram was only about 8 years old. That whole area was exploding and we were getting super excited by things. And there was thousands of people pouring into these areas. Then 2020 came and the place just went ballistic, and everyone started pouring into it. But since then, I feel like the number of people coming into the hobby has really shrunk. The number of people who are new to watches has really shrunk, and a lot of the watch community and the watch media was built around consistently servicing these newcomers to watches, and they're still doing that. I'm not a newcomer anymore, and two, I worry that there's not that many newcomers coming in anymore, and so they're not servicing the market of people who have been in the hobby for a long time. And maybe they can't service us because we're cynical old men that yell at clouds and we're never going to be happy anyway, so there's no point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I kind of get that with. I've tried to dabble with Watch Crunch, and there is some interesting stuff on there, but I think it's very much is for like the new people that join. I like it exists, and it is good for that. Like it's quite, it's quite supportive for people that buy all sorts of watches, even fromage ones.
Mm.
But yeah, I struggle to get kind of in the fray with some of it because it's not. It's one of those things where it is very sort of entry level
Yeah, and
conversations about watches, which serves a purpose for sure.
absolutely, and like someone mentioned Teddy before, and Teddy is a guy who I really want. He does great stuff, but he does great again. He does great stuff, but for other people.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's and I think he does great stuff for people that are just coming into the hobby, and they know about a few brands, and Teddy's a really safe way and a really good way of branching from maybe the 3 brands you knew before you started watching, and now I know 10 brands.
Yeah. No, I
But
think if YouTube was a game, he's won it. If YouTube review community was a game, he's won it. I mean, his sheer
oh,
effort, and he's
absolutely.
now built in its very successful business on top of it, and stuff. I mean, he's done amazing with that type of stuff, hasn't he? It's like he's sort of like the Rolex of the watch review.
In a strange way, that's probably true in many ways.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's been a really interesting discussion. Thanks thanks everyone for being so lively in the discussion, keeping it flowing. Pete, big thank you for keeping me company there.
No.
Very enjoyable chat, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Talk Sunday Social.